Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. This time we're going to be looking at BP10's mid-range sword deck. This is just the evolution of, you might see it called the Merchant Sword deck, Token Sword. It's basically the black and white sword deck from set 9. At this point, it just sort of contains so many different packages of cards, it's hard to really name it one specific thing, and with this set especially, it's gained the ability to drag the game out into turn 7, turn 8, turn 9 range a lot more effectively, and play those long games as opposed to needing to just be an aggressive deck that's clearing the game out as fast as possible. So here we are, mid-range sword. The deck, this time, this is actually the exact list that I played at the Series 4 Grand Showdown in Mexico City, that I took to second place with an 8-3 record. We had 2 losses in Swiss and then lost in the finals. So this deck is, I guess, kind of optimized, though I will admit that my first games playing it were in that tournament. So there are a couple changes I think I would want to make moving forward, and I'll talk about those at the end and sort of what cards I think like some other options are. But the list I'm going to be looking at here is the exact list that I played, so of course, you know, play around with it, make some changes as you find necessary. There's definitely a little bit of room for optimization in this deck. So here we have the list. A lot of stuff here is going to look familiar, especially from the BP09 version of the deck. We're, of course, still playing Celia, Liad, the Monochrome Duel package, Ralmia, Ether, all that stuff. Some of the new things that we're going to see here are the Merchant package featuring Ernesta, Omasuna, and Alyaska, as well as Prudent General and the inclusion of Mecha Gun Wielder, which we'll look at when we get there. The Evolve deck for this is quite tight since we have Fit Floral Fencer back in, which is a card I didn't previously play in BP09. There is probably also quite an amount of optimization to be done here that we'll discuss as well. If you want to check out the deck log page for this deck, you can use the code in the bottom right that is 2N1RQ, or you can use the link in the description. We are playing a very low curve with this deck, 14 1-drops, 8 2-drops, 10 3-drops. We only have 8 cards that cost more than 3. We are at 35 followers and 5 spells, 3 of those being Monochrome Duel, which is basically just a lot of followers, and then 2 Unbridled Furies. Not something I played in the Set 9 deck either, but after using it this past weekend, it definitely proved its worth to me. I think Unbridled Fury is... it deserves a slot in the deck for sure. So, jumping into the specifics of our cards here. First up, we have Celia, Sky Commander. This card is, you know, still here from last set, still broken. 1 cost 2/2, so Goblin stat line. It can evolve for 1 play point into Celia, Hope's Strategist. This is still a 2/2. Summons a Shield Guardian on evolve, which is a 1/1 with Ward. This is great going first. You can play Celia on 1 as a goblin. If they don't answer her, which most decks can't, then turn 2, you can evolve for 1 play point, get the Shield Guardian, and use your other play point to play Savage Swordsman as a 3/3. Get in for 2 damage, and you have 6/6 of stats on the board turn 2. You go second, you can do even more. You can play her turn 1, use your Evo point on her, and then turn 2, if both of your followers lived, you get to jam Ralmia and Evo point her, hit your opponent for 7. So very powerful card in the first couple turns of the game. Just an efficient way to make extra bodies, and then the rest of your deck will capitalize off of you having those extra bodies. She can also choose to evolve for 4 play points instead of 1. If you do that, you'll get Celia, Despair's Messenger, which is a 4/4 with Storm. On evolve, summon a Steelclad Knight and a Knight. This card is essentially just Floral Fencer, but for 1 extra play point, you get Storm. So very powerful, and essentially just a better Floral Fencer in the later turns of the game, and a good way to just sort of get some extra damage to close out games. It is also somewhat relevant that she makes a Steelclad Knight. We'll look at those interactions a bit later as well. Our next one drop is a new one from set 10. This is Ernesta Weapons Hawker, which is a 1-cost 1/1 merchant. Fanfare, select another swordcraft follower on your field, give it +1 attack and assail. At the start of your end phase, if there's a merchant follower not named Ernesta Weapons Hawker on your field, deal 2 damage to each enemy leader. We have 2 other merchant followers in this deck. Those are Ilmasuna and Alyaska, 3-drop and 5-drop respectively. So this will come up in later turns of the game where you play multiple cards in the same turn. But if you play Ernesta on 1 and your opponent doesn't answer her, so you play her on 1, swing with her, play something a little more threatening on 2, and your opponent has to answer the more threatening card. Turn 3, play Ilmasuna, you get the 2 burn damage. Otherwise, turn 4, you just play both of them. Alyaska will also pretty easily set up a board with both of them that we'll look at. So that 2 damage, you might chip 2 to 4 damage in a game using the effect, but it adds up, it matters. The Fanfare giving +1 attack is also rather relevant. Assail is honestly even the better part of that. It turns a lot of your bodies into just more efficient removal, especially giving it to just an evolved follower that, you know, essentially has rush but might not have assail otherwise. And then +1 attack can either make it easier to kill your opponent because you're buffing damage on board, or easier to utilize that assail for removal. Mecha Gun Wielder. This is the one that's going to seem out of place here. So this is a 1-cost 1/2 from set 7. Fanfare, put an assembly droid or repair mode token into your EX area. We're never using the repair mode in this deck, I promise you. You're getting an assembly droid. So you're getting a 1-cost 1/1 that can sack 3 Machina followers to deal 5 to an enemy follower. This has some synergies with the deck, I promise. The big one, turn 1, if you play Mecha Gun Wielder as your 1-drop, you get the assembly droid in the back. And turn 2, you can kind of do a Celia impression where you push up the assembly droid and then use your other play point to play the Savage Swordsman, and you get, instead of 6/6 of stats, you get 5/6 of stats, which is still pretty reasonable. And basically just gives you like 6 openers that are really good alongside Savage Swordsman for some just good early board building. It does also have some interactions with our top end, but we'll look at those when we get to the top end. Our last 1-drop follower is, of course, Savage Swordsman that we've mentioned a few times. This is a 1-cost 2/2 Fanfare. If there's a token follower on your field, give this follower +1/+1. We have lots of ways to make tokens early and mid-game, so unless you're playing this guy on turn 1, it's very likely he's going to be a 1-drop 3/3, which is just a fantastic stat line for the deck. And our last 1-drop card overall is Unbridled Fury. This is a 1-cost quick timing spell. Select an enemy follower on the field and deal it X damage. X equals the number of followers on your field. It is actually easier than you would think to make full boards with this deck, since we have so much token generation. More than once did I use this to kill a 5/5 Faust, and it's good for some other stuff too. Obviously, Faust can only either buff itself or the carried one to 5/5, meaning if you can make a full board, you can kill either of them. You can use it to kill an Old Blood King after it's made a board of bats, so it drains like rush and assail off of all the bats, and now they're just left with guys that can't kill your board, and then hopefully you just put 1,000,000 damage into them. Or you can use it in the mirror. Sometimes Alyaska will come down on turn 5 when it cannot yet evolve. If it does so, you can Unbridled Fury it, get rid of it before it has a chance to evolve. So good removal card overall. You can also hold it up as like just quick timing removal to kill, say, a Riley that's swinging at you. If you have a full board before she swings, you do have to still have 4 guys on board after she shoots something for 5, but that's kind of like the only thing. There's some smaller storm bodies, mainly in the mirror, that you'd be able to shoot. Otherwise, Unbridled Fury is unfortunately not big enough to handle like Gamma or Sukuna or Vania. Like, all those are going to be a little too big for it, but it is a quite good removal card overall, since it just costs 1 play point. Play 2 copies of Liad the Crescent Blade. This is a card that I previously had at 3 last set, and I would probably consider taking back up to 3 after playing this list. So he's a 2-drop 1/3. While he's reserved on your field, he has Intimidate and Aura. And then at the start of your end phase, you deal 1 damage to an enemy follower. This is good for mainly clearing out like tokens and stuff. The big aggro deck this format is of course going to be Sword. Like as far as aggressive early starts go, and 1 damage is often not enough to kill Sword's bodies. It is going to kill, of course, Shield Guardians, Knights, things like that. But there's a lot of 2/2s, 3/3s running around. The biggest benefit you're going to get against those is if they like rush trade into guys on your board a lot of times. Of course, you're trying to make it so your guys end up living. So if say a 4/4 kills a 3/3, it lives at 4/1. Your Liad can just sort of finish that off at the end of your turn without having to worry about it. That'll come up fairly frequently. So I do think this guy is something you just want to see in those matchups, though. The other big benefit is against removal-heavy matchups, he's going to be very difficult to get rid of, meaning he is a good target to stack your attack buffs on. You can put things like Ernesta's +1 attack, Magnus's +1 attack, sort of build those up on him, and then swing for 5, 6, whatever, later in the game, in addition to his on-evolve burn. So he evolves for 2 play points into a 2/4. All his text is the same, but on evolve, you deal 2 damage to an enemy leader or enemy follower. Sometimes you'll use this as removal, sometimes you'll use this as face damage, really just situational. If you keep the base form at 2 copies, I would actually consider going down to only 1 Evo, just because you don't see both copies of the base form in that many games. And even if you can't evolve the second one, it still has text on the front side. One of the issues with this deck is that the second Floral Fencer is the worst draw imaginable. And I think -1 Liad could go into +1 Floral Fencer Evo, just to make that a little less of a problem. Our next 2-drop is Queen Magnus the Black. This is a 2-drop 2/2. While this is on your field, each Queen Hemera the white on your field has a sail. And then you can engage Magnus to give up to 2 other Swordcraft followers on your field +1 attack. Again, anytime you stick a board, this is just 2 extra damage into your opponent's face, or it's 2 extra damage going toward removing your opponent's followers, or you can just stack it on your Liad, whatever. A lot of options there. Generally, it's going to be 2 extra damage at your opponent's face. It is quite easy to stick multiple bodies in this deck. You know, even if you just turn 1 Celia Evo, going second, get the 2/2 and the 1/1, you can play Magnus on turn 2, make it a 2/1 and a 3/2, hit your opponent for 5. Those things add up. So, good card, good at pushing damage, and of course is part of the black and white package that we'll see some more of later as well. 3 copies of Ralmia. This card's never not broken. She goes fast. 2-drop 3/2 Rush. Evolves for 3, but the evolve costs 1 less for every other follower on your field. And let me tell you, in this deck, it is always free. Actually always. It is unbelievable the number of games where I played Ralmia on turn 2, evoed her for 0, and played her on turn 5 for 2 play points, evoed her for 0, and had the 3 to pay for the on-evolve effect. It's actually ridiculous. This card is going to be, in the games that you draw her, she is going to make up the vast majority of your damage. So she evolves for 3 into a 4/3 Storm. On evolve, you can pay 3 to give her +1/+1 for every other follower on your field. And yeah, sometimes you just play her on 5, evo her, pay 3, and she's an 8/7. You chunk your opponent for like almost half their life. Honestly, I 20 to 0'd someone on turn 5, so sometimes it's a lot more than half their life, because obviously if you can evolve her for free, you untapped with a bunch of guys already on board that can swing. And yeah, you have an 8/7 Ralmia, your opponent has to answer it, and they have to do it fast, because she's killing them on the next turn, probably. So, very powerful card, very threatening, really can change like the flow of a game just immediately. Moving into our 3-drops, we have 2 copies of Aether of the Warrior Wing. This is a 3-cost 2/3. Fanfare, search your deck for a commander or officer card. Reveal it, add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. At the start of your end phase, if there are at least 7 Swordcraft followers in your cemetery, give each follower on your field +1/+1. So this card is... it was actually really good in the deck last set, but unfortunately I think it's too slow now. Usually you're going to be using it to search one of your 5-drops to guarantee that you actually have top end to close out the game. Either Alyaska or Monochrome Duel. Though sometimes if you already have one of those in hand, you can play it on 3, and whether you're going first or second, use it to grab like an Evo to curve into, either Floral Fencer or Prudent General. But unfortunately, like every time I played it or like had it in hand as an option to play, it seemed too slow. It just doesn't, like, paying 3 play points to play a 2/3 and not do anything else on board. Unfortunately, with the way the deck wants to play, it's like too much of a tempo loss. So a lot of the lists play 1. I bumped it up to 2 because I didn't want to have games where I didn't see my top end. But I think you'd honestly rather have a good turn 3 without your top end than a bad turn 3 with your top end. The more I've thought about it. So this is a card that can definitely go back to 1, maybe even 0. And there's some cards we'll look at the end that I'm not playing in here that I think might be decent options in this slot that I'll probably mess around with in testing some. But yeah, this card's still fine. It's good for consistency. But I think this deck cares more about tempo and pressure than it does consistency. Our next 3-drop is also a 2 of Floral Fencer. Coming back from the grave. Starter deck 2 Floral Fencer, 3-drop 3/3 Evos for 1. On Evo, you summon a 2/2 and a 1/1, same as Celia. We just don't have Storm. But you can do this on turn 3 going second with an Evo point, and that's really where this card shines. Playing this on turn 3 into a Prudent General on turn 4 essentially wins you the game. This is still 7/7 of stats on turn 3 potentially. It's very difficult for most decks to answer, so something is going to stick and you're going to benefit from it. Especially if you don't, like, a lot of times you'll have to turn the Floral Fencer sideways to, like, kill whatever they've played on turn 3, or turn 2 or 3. And then you end with like a 4/2 or something, right? And they just have to answer your 4/2. If you can Evo it and just not tap anything down and have 7/7 untapped, it is so hard to answer. And, you know, next turn you might just play like a Romia and Evo it and play a Magnus and buff 2 things and then hit your opponent for, I don't know, like 13 damage or whatever. It happens. It's one of the reasons this deck is so insane. The board building potential is just crazy. Our next 3-drop, this is our second merchant card, Ilmasuna Discord Hawker. 3-cost 3/3. Only 1 effect. Engage, select an enemy follower on the field, deal it 3 damage. If you have a merchant not named Ilmasuna Discord Hawker on your field, deal 5 damage instead. So, of course, your options there are going to be Ernesta, the 1-drop, or Alyaska, the 5-drop. Basically, you can play this on 3, kill your opponent's guy, and it's good. Or you can play it on, you know, a later turn with other merchants, and it's 5 damage removal, and it kills basically anything. So, good card overall. Definitely better than I expected it to be. I expected this card to be kind of clunky and not accomplish a whole lot, but when I was actually playing it and using it as removal, it never felt like a bad draw. This card actually just almost always felt kind of insane. So yeah, really surprisingly good card. Definitely one of the things that can help push this deck in like the mid-range direction where you're okay playing longer games and just trying to sort of stall out until turns where you get giant chunks of damage on your opponent. Our last 3-drop is Queen Hemera the White. 3-drop 4/3 Rush. Fanfare, summon a Knight token, and then Strike, it also puts a Knight token into your EX area. However, if there is a Queen Magnus the Black on your field when you play her, you get 2 Knights off the Fanfare. So, another really good card for board building. You can curve these where you just, like, do a thing on 1, play Magnus on 2, hit your opponent, play Hemera on 3, make 2 Knights, and then you have, you know, 4 or 5 guys on board. Pretty good plays, honestly, if you can manage to curve that out. Even if you can't, though, on later turns, just hard playing both of them on like turn 5 onward, or of course you'll get both of them off of Monochrome Duel. makes for some just really easy board rebuilding. And stacking up knights in your EX area by swinging with Hemera, say you play 2 or 3 Hemeras throughout the course of a game, and have 2 or 3 knight tokens in your EX area, that can actually add up to a lot of burst damage on a later turn that your opponent might not be expecting. That can just sort of close out games from like 6, 8, 10 life pretty easily. Next up, we have our only 4-drop. This is Prudent General. This is a new card from set 10. Each of your Swordcraft tokens on the field has Rush, which is very powerful, insanely powerful text. It's another reason this deck can go so mid-range now. It's because we basically just always have removal tied to all of our tokens, which we make plenty of. Fanfare, he summons a Steelclad token, Steelclad Knight, which is a 2/2. And then Evo for 1 into a 4/4. Has the same Rush text, but on Evo, we get to make another Steelclad Knight and give each Steelclad Knight on our field +1/+1. So that doesn't just include the one that he made on Fanfare and the one he made on Evo. If you have any Steelclads sitting around from a Celia or a Floral Fencer, those will also get +1/+1 as well. This is part of what makes the turn 3 Floral Fencer into turn 4 Prudent General curve so backbreaking. Because even if your opponent removes your 4/4 or your 1/1, if the 2/2 lives, it gets +1/+1, and you now have, 13 of stats on board that just run over your opponent. And a lot of those are going to stay untapped on turn 4, so turn 5 might just be the turn you kill them. It is often, resolving Floral into Prudent is what sets up the, play Ralmia, Evo, pay 3, swing for 8, and win the game, just because your opponent can't remove the Prudent General board. Our first 5-drop is another new card. This is the top end of the Merchant package. Honestly, probably the card that, I say, the card that makes it worth running, but, I didn't actually draw my first Aliaska until, top 8, I think. So I almost never saw this card, and the other card still felt plenty powerful. But this card feels really good too when you get to play it and utilize it. So 5-cost 4/4. Fanfare, search your deck for an Ilmusina, Discord Hawker, summon it, and shuffle. So that's going to be the 3-drop 3/3. So it honestly makes it fine to just run this card out on turn 5. Because you still get 7/7 of stats, and you get a removal effect. And then if your opponent can't remove the untapped 4/4, or if you just play this on a later turn, when you evolve it, you get a 5/5 that searches your deck for Ernesta and summons it. So if you play and evolve this, you're going to get both other merchants, the Ilmusina and the Ernesta, which means your deal 5 damage removal is online, your burn 2 at end of turn is online. You get to +1 attack and assail the Aliaska, who has Rush, essentially, since he evolved. So you get a 6/5 Rush Assail that can be removal if you need it to be. And, well, as if that wasn't all enough, you also get to put an Exterminus weapon into your EX area. So Exterminus weapon is a 2-cost token. It is a 6/6 ward. Fanfare, destroy an enemy card on the field. Doesn't even have to be a follower. You can actually use this to destroy amulets. Not many matchups that's super relevant in right now, but when it comes up, it comes up. And then last words, deal 4 damage to each enemy leader. So it's a ward that, they have to clear it, but if they clear it, it chunks them for 1/5 of their life. Which, this late in the game could mean they just die if they answer it. Or, maybe means that it just puts them in range to die on your next turn. This card also, though, you might be worried, oh, what if they banish it? What if they bounce it? What if they bottom deck it? Whatever. That is part of why we have Mecha Gunwielder in this deck. If you didn't notice, the Exterminus weapon token is Machina trait. This is the only Swordcraft Machina card. But it means that if we play Aliaska on, say, turn 6 going second or turn 7 going first and evolve it, we're not going to have the play points to push up the Exterminus weapon. So, on our next turn, we can play the Exterminus weapon, destroy an enemy follower. That's going to clear 1 ward. Play Mecha Gunwielder, get the Assembly Droid, push up the Assembly Droid. So we've spent 4 play points. We have 3 dudes in play. 3 dudes means Ralmia evolves for 0. So we can play Romia, Evo her for 0. So we now have a 4/3 Storm. And then we can use the Assembly Droid's activated ability to bury the Mecha Gun Wielder, the Assembly Droid itself, and the Exterminus weapon, deal 5 to a second ward on our opponent's board, and then trigger the Exterminus weapon lastwards to deal 4 to our opponent, and then storm them for 4 with Romia. If you have 1 extra play point beyond that, you can pay the 3 to make Romia even bigger. So this could be anywhere from like 8 to 12 damage in a single turn off of playing these, and it's pretty low investment setup. And of course the Exterminus weapon is still good outside of that interaction, but it does give the Mecha Gun Wielder some late game application that ends up being actually quite good. And of course the last card in our deck is Monochrome Duel, still a good card from last set. 5-cost spell, search your deck for a Queen Hemera the white and Queen Magnus the black, summon them, shuffle your deck, give them +1/+1. So for 5 play points, you get a 5/4 and a 3/3. That's 8/7 of stats for 5. Plenty reasonable. But Queen Hemera the white also has her fanfare, which is going to see Magnus the black, which is going to give you 2 knights. So you're actually getting 10/9 of stats for 5. So, you know, 10/9 of stats for 5. Then you can use Queen Magnus's activated ability, give 2 things +1 attack. So you're actually getting 12/9 of stats for 5. 12/9 of stats for 5 is a lot. This card is kind of insane to play on turn 5. It's kind of insane to play on turn 6. Kind of insane to play on any turn, especially since Hemera is a 5/4 rush assail, which means she can basically turn into targeted removal on anything and then also leave you with the rest of the tokens anyway. So you still get like the 2/1 tokens and a 3/3, which remove your opponent's dude and still have guys and put a knight in your EX area because you attacked, is really good value. There's really just no time that this card's bad. It is your ideal turn 5 play, I think, like every game, basically. Unless you're evolving a Prudent General going first. But even then, like, Monochrome is really good too. So, gives you a lot of good turn 5 plays. You're honestly, like, spikier in power a lot earlier than most decks, because you're starting to hit spikes on, like, 3, 4, 5, or, like, 4 and 5 going first. Whereas other decks are kind of hitting them on, like, 5, 6, 7. And you're already hitting your, like, strongest turns by that point. So, card makes the deck really fast, more so than I honestly expected when I first started playing the black and white package in set 9. But this card has more text, shocking. When it's in your cemetery, you can pay 2 and banish it to give each knight on your field +1 attack and storm. That's just the 1/1s. You don't get to give the Steelclad Knights that, but it's fine. Because if you're piling them up in your EX area throughout the game, and even if you just like have another Hemera in hand late game, you can just like play the Hemera, make a knight, push up 2 knights from your EX area. You could rush the Hemera into something, push up another knight, so you have 4 knights on your board, and then just pay 2, banish the Monochrome Duel, swing for 8, which is pretty crazy. Just like off of one, like playing a Hemera from hand late game, and you just like get 8 damage. So really good for just sneaking in a lot of extra stuff like that. Or even like on the late game turns where you just go say like, oh, like all I have is a Celia, and you play Celia, Evo her for 4, make the 2/2 and the 1/1. You can just pay 2 and give the 1/1, make it a 2/1 storm, right? So now instead of 4 storm damage, you have 6 storm damage. And sometimes that's what makes the difference. Like sometimes that extra 2 damage is all you need. And it's another part of what makes this card so powerful. So here is the whole deck. Pros of the deck, obviously it creates insanely wide boards that are difficult to answer multiple times in a row. That's, you know, you go second. This deck is actually like, it's crazy because the last couple formats going first has just been way more powerful in terms of like staying ahead of your opponent and playing cards and controlling the tempo of the game. But this deck actually feels insane going second because you get to play Floral Fencer on 3, into Prudent General on 4, into Monochrome Duel on 5, into Alyaska on 6. And it's just like, how is your opponent ever going to keep up with all of that, even if they went first? It almost feels like you did ramp a play point ahead of your opponent, even though you didn't. And doing that, like, just turn after turn after turn after turn and making these giant boards, nothing can really answer them that many times in a row outside of, like, Kuwan checkmate. So that's almost your win condition. Is like not even Storm, it's just, oops, I stuck a giant board. So that's, you know, huge upside of the deck. You, of course, do have large chunks of Storm damage available, even though it's not, like, your sole win condition. Celia is still hitting for a lot. Romia can still be hitting for a ton, and Monochrome Duel can still sneak in Storm damage as well. And then most of your cards can double as sources of removal, due to things like Assembly Droid, or Unbridled Fury, or Hemera having a sale from Magnus, or Ernesta just giving some random card a sale, Prudent General giving all your tokens Rush. Like, there's just a lot of random sources of removal. Ilmisuna, her entire existence is removal, so, like, a lot of just random pieces of removal that help you play into a later game than Sword was previously able to. Some cons of the deck, on the other hand, it is hard to deal with decks that can clear your wide boards across multiple turns, since part of your win condition is, of course, reliant on sticking these boards. And we have little to no ward or healing in order to stabilize. It's pretty much just the Exterminus weapon, which comes really too late to be a real, like, stabilization tool. So we are a deck that definitely wants to control the flow of the game, and be forcing our opponent to answer us every turn, rather than be in a spot where we're trying to stabilize from our opponent. And playing the mirror really comes down to, like, understanding this, and knowing that your win condition is, you know, can sort of be balanced between, like, you need to be the one running your opponent out of ways to kill you, because you're not going to have a way to, like, gain life back or whatever. You need to sort of understand what, like, based on the cards you draw, what you have to do to be able to, like, control the pace of the game, because you're not going to be able to, like, grasp it back out of your opponent once they get it. So yeah, here is the list we played, of course, and the Evo deck. And again, if you want to see the deck log page, you can use the code in the bottom right, 2N1RQ, or the link in the description. And before we close it out, a look at some cards that I would consider playing. This is mainly over the Ether slot. I think that's the main slot I would look at changing out. I think a third Floral Fencer is probably unnecessary, though going to a 3-2 line could make the going second curves even more consistent and, like, more powerful. You could add, like, you could cut, like, both Ethers for one Floral Fencer and one other card, cut Liad down to one Evo, put in the second Floral Fencer Evo. Or you could just cut the Liad Evo for a Floral Fencer Evo either way. I think that's really completely up to you. I think either one's a valid option. But other things that you could cut the Ether for, one of the deck's issues is that because Prudent General is your only 4-drop, your only turn 4 going first play is Floral Fencer Evo, which we only play 2 of, because you don't want a Prudent on 4. You can if you have to. It's still 5/5 on 4. But if you can avoid it, you'd rather. So Sword Flash Panther, solid 4-drop, 4/3 Rush. Fanfare, select a Swordcraft follower that costs 2 or less in your cemetery, summon it, and give it +1 attack. This was a card we played 3 of previously, and it is an insanely powerful card. Its primary targets are Liad, Queen Magnus, or Romia. The main thing you're going to be grabbing is Romia, since it is very easy to Sword Flash, get the Romia back, and have enough followers to evolve Romia for 0, which means you can Storm for 5. Sometimes you'll get, like, Magnus to buff stuff, or Liad if you need the removal effect, but those are primarily only going to happen if you don't have Romia, since Sword Flash can just rush as removal a lot of the time anyway. But yeah, this card's really good. I wish there was room for, like, 3 of it, but there's just not. But I could see cutting the Ethers to bring it back. It makes your 3-drop slot on the curve a little sketchier. That's kind of like the big issue, right? Is you go down to, like, 8 3-drops if you start adding this stuff in. But like I said, I could see the third Floral Fencer. You say 9 3-drops, and you just go up to 4 4-drops. Probably perfectly reasonable. Even 5 4-drops is probably not unreasonable. Yeah, this is a super good option. Definitely something I would consider. One card I was looking at that I actually ended up playing against in the top 8 is Nagi. So Nagi was one of my favorite cards in the combo IMAS deck because we played like 20-something 1-drops in that deck. You could always use her effect. And I was considering playing her in this deck as well. She's a 4-drop, 4/4. Fanfare, you banish 2 1-cost cards from your cemetery. Choose up to 2 of the following. Option 1, destroy an enemy follower. Option 2, deal 2 to your opponent. Or option 3, draw a card, discard a card. So this being... in this deck, you're almost always going to be like destroy an enemy follower, deal 2 to their face, which is a pretty tempo positive turn 4 play, I think. You have tons of 1-drops that it's like pretty likely you have 2 in your cemetery, and you don't have recursion for these cards. So banishing them does not affect your game plan whatsoever. It's not something you have to worry about like in the combo deck where you might have been like adding stuff back, or in some other decks like Arbiter decks later. You know, you just play a Celia on turn 1, play a Unbridled Fury at some point, or an Ernesta at some point, and then run out Nagi. Or you like turn 1 Celia, turn 2 Savage Swordsman, and once they both die, you can just turn 4 Nagi, banish them, destroy your opponent's like turn 4 play, turn 3 play, and also to their face. And they have an untapped 4/4 that they still have to answer, and then you can go to Prudent General on the next turn. So I think this card's pretty solid. If you're playing Nagi, I definitely wouldn't play 2. I think 1 Nagi, 3 Floral Fencer is probably like the correct direction to go on that. Whereas Sword Flash Panther, you could maybe justify 2 copies of. But I think this is a solid option. Definitely something to mess around with. And the last thing I was looking at is actually a new legendary from the set. Oluwan the Chariot. So this is a 3-cost, 3/3 Fanfare, choose 1. Option 1, you get a Knight token, which is just a 1/1. So for 3 play points, you get 4/4 of stats. Not insane, but it's so modal. And you can do this turn 3 going first. I think this is fine. It does also give you another generator for Knights in the late game, to where you could just say, like, play Oluwan, get the Knight, and then banish the Monochrome Duel to give it Storm. That is only going to represent like an efficient amount of damage if you also have Magnus or Ernesta to buff it, since option 3 is to deal 2 to your opponent's leader, which is just better than giving a Knight Storm. But if you have multiple Knights, right, you could, you know, if you're going to banish it anyway, whatever. I guess still like dealing 2 damages straight to their face is better. Unless you have Ernesta to buff it, or Magnus to buff 2. Option 2 is give this follower +1 attack, rush, and ward. Makes it a 4/3 rush ward. Pretty solid on 3 as well, especially since it has ward. If you play it on 3, give it an attack, rush, and ward, and you have a 4/3 that you don't tap down, and then swing with it on turn 4. That's probably fine. It might just be better to make the Knight at that point anyway, though. Option 3, deal 2 damage to your opponent. Always good. Option 4 gives you a Hail Mary. Option 4 is... oh boy. I don't know how you fit this in the Evolve deck. This might be a world where you're like cutting Floral Fencers for this, or you just play 2/1 Floral Fencer and 2/1 Liad to fit this. So I don't know that this is worth it. But option 4, you can pay 4, bury this card, summon Oluwan Runaway Chariot from your Evolve deck. Oluwan Runaway Chariot is a 7-drop 7/7 that cannot attack. At the start of your end phase, you perform the following twice. You roll a 6-sided die. If you roll a 1 or 2, you destroy each enemy follower on the field. If you roll a 3 or a 4, you deal 7 to your opponent. If you roll a 5 or a 6, you deal 7 to yourself. Sometimes... we have GeForce game driver ready to install. Sometimes Oluwan will just kill yourself. Other times, Oluwan will kill your opponent. It's kind of just there if like you have no other way to win the game. It's like, oh, your opponent has lethal on board, you can't clear it, whatever. We'll just try to roll some dice and kill them. It's fine. The guy that made top 8 that I played against, you know, he played Nagi and he played Oluwan. He also played God-Sent Stride though, so you know that deck was wild. But I think Oluwan's base form is good enough that the advance is like maybe worth considering. I'm probably just going to play like either one Nagi or some Sword Flash Panthers, mess around with that. But, you know, you do you. This guy's good enough to consider. But yeah, I think that's it. This video is getting kind of long. Thank you for watching. I love this deck. This deck felt super fun to play, super powerful, super oppressive. The mirrors are exhilarating, I think is a good word for them. They're stressful. But the deck's super fun. Deck is super strong. I'm probably going to continue playing it a lot this format. So it did well for me in Mexico. I was very happy with it. Yeah, so we'll have some more deck profiles coming out for set 10. Let me know what you think of this one. Let me know if you've played this deck and enjoy it, or think it's as powerful as I do. I think it's honestly maybe the best deck this format. So starting off with a good one here. But yeah, if there's any specific decks you want to see out of set 10, I'm of course going to cover as many as I can. I am not traveling nearly as much in July as I have the last 2 months, so hopefully more consistent video output going on here. But yep, so we'll have some more out soon. Until then, there should be some videos on the screen for you to watch, and we will see you later.